Joshlin Smith's mother, Kelly Smith, and her two co-accused have been found guilty of kidnapping and trafficking more than a year after the child disappeared from their home. Western Cape High Court Judge Nathan Erasmus found Kelly, Jacquina Paulus, and Stefano van Rijn guilty. All three had denied the charges. Joshlin has not been seen since 19 February 2024, when she vanished from her home in Saldanha Bay. Director at Molo Songololo, Patric Solomons, joins us now for more on this. Good morning, Patric, and thank you so much for your time.
Hi, good morning to you and to your viewers.
What are your thoughts on the guilty verdict handed down to Kelly Smith and Jacquina Paulus and Stefano van Rijn in this case?
Well, it was a much anticipated judgment. It was a trial that gripped the family, the community, and also on a national level. And also we've seen that there's been great interest by the foreign media. So on international level, there's interest in this particular case. So, yeah, from our initial response was that of, yes, the child is missing, something really, really bad happened. And then also the evidence that was led, although it was all over the place, I think generally the public wanted to have this kind of verdict. But it's also a very bitter verdict because Joshlin is still missing. We still don't know really what happened. There's lots of questions. And then, of course, we don't know whether she's alive or not. So it's a very, a sweet, bitter kind of verdict at the moment for the family, for the community, and just the general public in South Africa. We tried to make sense of it, but the more we looked at just the verdict and the sort of explanation of the judge coming to this particular verdict, determining that the state case was strong and the state proved its case, we still have a lot of questions in terms of just based on the evidence that was led in court. Apparently, the child was sold to someone. We don't know who this person is. There was no particular evidence led to the identity of this person. We also know that there was lots of other persons involved. There's a person that became a state witness. So we actually left with many questions.
Do you think that Kelly Smith, Joshlin's mom, will ever fully disclose what happened to her child, or do you think she will just continue to maintain her current stance?
It's very difficult to say because those who followed the trial will know that a lot of people changed their story so many times. Of course, we were also hoping that she would give evidence and tell her part of the story, and also the other two main accused, but that didn't happen. So we really don't know. We hope maybe in the future, that the search will continue for Joshlin, that some new evidence will come to light that will give us some sort of idea of exactly happened.
And
so in this particular case where we seek justice for children, there is no real justice here for this child. The child is still missing. We still don't know really what happened. We don't get a very clear idea of exactly, what the situation is, although the judge did find sufficient evidence to suggest that the state made a very strong case to find a guilty verdict.
What role do you believe the community played in helping the prosecution team build a strong case?
I think from the very beginning, the community responded and they wanted to find the child important. But also from the very beginning, we saw that there were so many people involved, and then all kinds of stories about the child were spread through social media and otherwise. We've also seen individuals, very high prominent individuals, who were rushed off to Saldanha Bay to be part of the search and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of interest, and then it also sort of gave us an idea of the scale of the problem. We have a big problem with regard to children who go missing and bad things that happen to children. So the community did respond. And And unfortunately, the community, we've seen also the response now. I believe that the family home of Ms. Smith was burnt down last night. So there's still a lot of anger. This case threw up a lot of anger within the community in terms of anger towards the alleged offenders and those now who were found guilty, and then also anger towards the investigation, anger towards certain individuals and groups of individuals, all are concerned or involved in the case. So the emotions ran high, and some of the anger is quite understandable because when something bad happens to a child, when a child goes missing, we expect everybody to do their best to resolve the problem, to make sure the child is found and safe, and then also for the investigation to be effective, and that there are some sort of communication and people know exactly what's happening.
Now,
So from the very beginning, there were some challenges and problems.
Of resolving problems, the NPA mentioned that legislation related to human trafficking is still new. Do you think that there's a need for further reforms or strengthening of existing laws regarding human trafficking?
The problem is, I myself was part of that whole process of developing the new law, Molo Songololo, many other organizations. We pioneered the campaign already in the 2000, even before the 2000. More than 20 years ago, we were part of this whole process. We have comprehensive law. The problem that we do have is sometimes in the interpretation of the law and then the lack of understanding and the use of the law. We have seen in recent years that many people have been reported around crimes related to human trafficking and child trafficking issues. There's been investigations, people have been charged, our courts have prosecuted people for different kinds of human trafficking, child trafficking, for sexual purposes, for labor purposes, for human organs, for harvesting of human organs, right? So we've seen a whole range of cases that appeared in front of our courts. Some of those cases, a lot of those cases have been successfully prosecuted, but we've also seen that a lot of these cases get thrown out of court because of lack of evidence, because there are problems with the investigation. Some of them has been cross-border investigations that happened. We've just recently seen around the issue of child pornography and online sexual abuse cases, for example, and the cooperation with international law enforcement agencies. So we have improved our response to the offense of trafficking in persons.
So Patric,
but we can do better.
This case, as you've rightfully mentioned earlier, has garnered significant attention. Do you think that this will lead to increased awareness and action against human trafficking in South Africa?
The case did put the spotlight on one, missing children, right? And then also what caused children going missing. So in this case, there was evidence that the child was sold, so people get sold, for example. There's also evidence that persons were transported to other parts of the country or even outside the country. So there's a cross-border element to these things. We've also seen, or the evidence that was less suggests there was multiple people involved. So it is quite a complex situation. And we've seen that human trafficking, child trafficking are complex issues and cases that we have to deal with. So it put the spotlight on those things. And I think it also highlighted the challenges that we have with regard to these kinds of searches, investigations, and also the nature of these kinds of crimes. And hopefully it will create more education around it. I think our police force and SAPS and our child protection services hopefully will tighten up on where there are gaps, for example. And then also with the prosecution, I think the national prosecuting authorities will also need to look at these particular kind of cases and then examine the complexities that is there and try to close some of those gaps.
All right. Now, also
from our side, we believe that we need more education around these kinds of criminal offenses.
Thanks, Patric. In a nutshell, now the accused are set to appear in court next week for sentencing procedures. What are your expectations for the sentencing phase?
It's very difficult to say at the moment. I think now that there is this guilty verdict, I think possibly that the judge will take the opportunity to further explain exactly how the judge came to that conclusion and decision, and to also quell some of the sort of there's already a lot of misinformation going around the judgment in itself, and then also possibly that we will get a little bit more insight into the kind of evidence that the state and the defense led, and the mitigation of sentence sort of arguments that will be there. So hopefully we'll get some more information, but also we hope that from the state side, we will get some indication as to what happens next, and that the search for this child will continue and intensify.
All right. And are there any aggravating or mitigating factors that you think that the court should take into account during sentencing?
It's very difficult to say because I think the defense, just before the judgment, a couple of hours and days before, the defense was very sort of sure that they had a good case. And they believed that the state did not present a strong case. And they were convinced that they were able to pick the state's case apart. So it's very difficult in this particular kind of situation because the evidence was so all over the place. It had to be refuted by the cross-examining process, and also witnesses contradicting themselves. Somehow the judge was able to sort of go through all of this and find the guilty verdict. From our side, we would like to see that there will be some sort of indication presented when the next week or whenever this happened, that what will happen next in terms of putting the spotlight back onto the child that's missing.
Patric,
because the spotlight has been now on the accused, but now we'd like to see the spotlight on the child who's missing, and that the search for her continue.
All right. In closing and very briefly, what message would you like to convey to the family of Joshlin Smith and the community affected by this case?
These kinds of cases brings out a lot of latent trauma, and also throws out a lot of challenges that we experience within families, within the community, and just generally with child abuse cases and cases when children go missing. I think the opportunity we have now is to pull closer, to unite, and to strengthen our child protection mechanisms and systems that we have for families and communities, and also on a national level. And I think that is what we'd like to see, that everybody work closer together. It's not only Joshlin, but also Joshlin's extended family. I think they will be going through a tough time also. We've also already seen Kelly's mum, for example, making some comments in the media about her position and how she feels. So they're going to need some support, and I hope that the community and they must reach out to social support services if they need that, and that the community will pull together and to strengthen the child protection mechanisms, the community of Saldanha and surrounding areas, and also just globally for child protection organizations, also to look at what can we do as Molo Songololo, non-governmental organizations, and also state services to improve the protection of our children.